Good morning, MAB Elementary. It's Mr. T for your Tuesday Circle on April 28th. The year is 2020. 2020. Wow. We're moving on in time, aren't we? Well, your weather today looks like started at 46 degrees earlier this morning, going to get up to 60. That's kind of the magic number for Mr. T because that's when I start riding my bike. So 60 is good. We need more of that. Chance of rain is going to be 20%. It's going to be cloudy. Surely would be nice to have some sun since we haven't had that much in the last few days. Sunrise is at 6:14 a.m. and it sets at 8 o'clock p.m. Every day on Tuesday, I like you to calculate the number of hours of sunlight we have so you can see if the number is going up or down. And I'd be curious to know what you found out. We have a south wind today, about 7 miles per hour. And remember, when we have those southerly winds and southwesterly winds, that's when we tend to get rain because that moisture is coming up from the Gulf of Mexico and gets sucked up into our atmosphere here. And then when it saturates the clouds, we get precipitation and rain. So chance of rain is small, and that's a good thing. Mrs. Kiefer yesterday, it was really cool to be on Zoom with you guys for her morning circle, and she talked about the virtue of the week, imaginative, an imaginative person. Wow, that's a compliment. That's a virtue. If somebody says you're really imaginative, that means that your brain is working all the time and you're thinking up interesting things to do and to think about. I was thinking imagination, Mrs. J. Terrio has often said, it's a quote from somebody that she's read, and said that, only boring people get bored. And a boring person who is bored lacks imagination because your brain can imagine anything you put to it. So if you just quietly sit down and think, you can come up with some really fascinating things to think about. And I like to reference for you the best books you've ever read, the books you love to read, are by authors who had tremendous imagination. We're reading one right now in Literature Group, The Incredible Journey. And that author has an amazing imagination. And she sat down at her typewriter and she created this adventure of these three animals going through Canada. And you can see not only does she have the talent to imagine the story, she has this amazing ability to write it in a descriptive way that helps you go there. So if your imagination is not working for you, all you got to do, like Miss Kiefer said, is get yourself out a favorite book and read, and you'll go there to the imagination of the author. So my challenge to you this week is to make sure you read some books by your favorite authors and think about how imaginative they were in creating those stories that you love to read. So today in history, April 28th, looking back, let's see what Mr. T found on his list that I am interested in and thought you might be interested in. Well, in 1788, the state of Maryland, our neighbor to the east and the north, ratified the Constitution of the United States. It was the seventh state to do that. Constitution to this day is the basic law of our land, and it defines how our rulers, how our elected politicians can determine what American people need to do or not do. And so it's always, always important because it limits what government can do and it provides for freedom of the individual to do anything they want to do as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. And that's kind of the basis of our American system of government as enshrined in the Constitution. In 1861, in a challenge to the Constitution, we had the American Civil War. And a very important moment in the Civil War was Admiral Farragut was able to capture New Orleans, Louisiana, the port in the Mississippi, and you know Mr. T loves so much. But New Orleans was critical because it was a major port through which ships could come in and supply the Confederate armies, the southern states. And Admiral Farragut came down the river from the north and conquered New Orleans and captured it and closed off that port to the Confederate forces. And that made it very difficult for them to continue the war as long as they did. In 1930, the first nighttime baseball game ever was played in Independence, Kansas. And that was a major event because baseball at that time and even today is a major pastime of the American people. And the ability to play it at night it broadened the opportunity for more people who would work during the day to be able to go to see baseball games at night. And the electric lighting system allowed them to do that. So that was a major breakthrough for baseball and its popularity in America. In 1947, a famous Norwegian explorer and adventurer, his name was Thor Heyerdahl. And Thor Heyerdahl, with 5 very brave and courageous men, set out on a raft made out of balsa tree logs, very light floating logs, from the coast of Peru in the Pacific Ocean. And his hypothesis, he was an adventurer and explorer, his hypothesis was that Polynesian people, the Polynesian islands out in the distant Pacific Ocean, were actually settled by people from South America who came there on these balsa rafts and were able to do that. And in fact, he proved able to do that. It's a fascinating story. It's an adventure. It's his journal, and it's called Kon-Tiki. K-O-N, one word, new word, T-I-K-I. Mr. T read that book back when I was about your age. And I've been a traveling adventurer ever since because it just set my imagination wandering about the places I might go and the things I might see. So Thor Heyerdahl was an adventurer, an excellent adventurer, and I recommend Kon-Tiki as a great book. In 1967, World's Fair opened up it was called Expo 67 in Montreal, Canada. And it happened to be Mr. T happened to go there. I was living in Baltimore at the time and working there as a college intern and drove up to Montreal and went to see the expo. It was quite a trip. Well, that's today, April 28th, throughout history. I hope you've enjoyed our visit this morning. I want to encourage you, Mr. T will be posting lessons in math for you to consider and work on and make that brain strong, and I hope you do that. Have a great work week. I'll also be doing some more astronomy lessons. And finally, at the end of the week on Friday, as we always do for you third year, well, no, it's for everybody actually, I'll be reading the next chapter of The Incredible Journey, and we'll see what happened to the cat, who, when we last left him, was in great jeopardy. So this is Mr. T, wishing you a great day, and thanking you for being with me. Over and out.